All right.
Hi everyone.
And welcome to
Episode 3
of Literarily Dead.
I love it. I hope you all had a great holiday.
Yes. No matter what you celebrated.
If you're still celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
Happy whatever you celebrate. Hope you're having a fabulous day. I'm still recuperating from 6 Christmases. The
fact that you had 6 Christmases.
It was intense. It was really intense. I spent probably 12 hours yesterday with family. And I'm exhausted. It was an exhausting process yesterday.
She's living the engaged life right now.
It's real rough. We still didn't get to see all the family that we have. We were supposed to have 8, but it didn't happen.
Oh.
Because we couldn't fit everyone in on time. So.
Oh. Well, all right.
Someday we'll perfect this. But yeah, happy holidays. Happy whatever you celebrate. This is our winter/holiday/ Christmas / fuck 2016, it's almost over episode.
Thank God. I was so sad we lost George Michael on Christmas.
So, is it bad that my mom told me that yesterday, and I looked at her and like, I don't know who George Michael is?
I mean, it's not really bad. He was for the older generation, I guess, but he gave us Last Christmas. Like, I saw something yesterday, it was like, isn't that ironic how, like, the guy who gave us Last Christmas died on Christmas?
Now I know who he is.
Yeah. No,
my mom tried to explain it to me, it didn't work.
He was the lead singer of Wham, so he sang Wake Me Up Before You Go Go.
Okay, so, me being from Rochester, when my mom was like, George Michael from Wham, I was like, Channel 13? Because we have Wham News.
Oh, man.
So I'm sitting there like, there's your George Michael on Wham 13. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we've got off on that tangent.
We're just going to slowly get back into what we're actually supposed to be talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, the random decider told us bad things would happen if I didn't start.
Mm-hmm.
So, I will start.
Okay.
So this week, we're going to discuss Hans Christian Andersen. I'm so glad Jean knows. Jean would know.
Of course I would know.
So, as I was doing research, I'm sitting here and I was like, oh, he wrote that? Wait, what? And I was so confused. Like, he wrote The Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
The Ugly Duckling.
Yeah.
Thumbelina.
Yeah.
All of this shit. I was like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
I obviously am a very bad literary person as well as a film major.
It's fine.
Regardless. Okay. So Hans Christian Andersen was born in Denmark in 1805. He was an only child. And then his dad died when he was only a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then after his dad died, rumors came about that he was the illegitimate child of King Christian III.
Oh, Jesus.
And this persists, like, even today. A lot of people dispute it, saying that he wasn't, but there's not enough evidence to say whether or not he is or isn't. So,
okay.
That's interesting. This whole thing comes about because he's from, like, a really poor family. His father had claimed all his life that their ancestors were well-to-do, from higher classes. So they're actually a poor family, but after his father dies, he gets to go to private boarding schools and gets the best of the best education.
Uh-huh.
So he starts with the Royal Danish Theatre, and they persuade King Frederick VI to pay for his education. So that's how he gets all this fancy education, by persuading the king.
Oh my God.
Like, I don't know how he's related to King Christian III. I probably should have done research on that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're like, oh yeah, this is your nephew or something, or your grandson, or some weird crap like that, maybe that's why they paid for it. But who knows? So, when he was at grammar school, that was paid for him by the king, he lived at the headmaster's house or something with the headmaster, where he was abused, bullied, and discouraged from writing.
Oh.
So he originally starts out in theater, and they tell him that he's not good enough, and that he should just focus on writing. And then grammar school, they tell him, don't focus on writing. Focus on something else.
Mm-hmm.
But he chooses to pursue writing regardless, because that's what his passion is.
Persevere.
Right. So he started actually writing plays for the Danish theater. And they got really popular, and then he started with poetry, and then he went into fairy tales. So in 1835, he published his first fairy tale volumes, including well-known stories such as Little Mermaid, Thumbelina, and The Emperor's New Clothes.
Oh, that was my that and the 12 Dancing Princesses was probably my favorite fairy tale as a kid.
I'm so glad that you know his stuff, because I'm sitting here like the Grimm's brothers are like the only people I know. I remember doing a fairy tale unit in like 2nd grade. So that's probably the last time I heard about Hans Christian Andersen.
Probably.
So awkward. And in 1845, so 10 years later, his stories were published in English, and then his popularity rose in England and in America. So much so that he met and became friends with Charles Dickens. Because why not?
Of course.
So I was reading that he had stayed with Dickens. He had visited England, and they had become friends, and then 10 years later he came back to England and stayed with the Dickens family for 5 weeks. And they were so not about that. So he went back to Holland. Norway? Where is he from? Hold on. Cut this out. Denmark. So he goes back to Denmark. And he continues to write to Charles Dickens, thinking that they're friends. And then Charles just doesn't answer him back.
Oh,
for years. And Hans doesn't understand why he's doing this.
Charles Dickens, why you gotta be a fucking dick?
Right. And I didn't read why it happened, but yeah, he just stopped all correspondence between them for like 5 years.
What?
And Hans had no idea what he did. So, moral of the story, Charles Dickens is a dick. Lives up to his name. Okay, so in his personal life, he never married.
Okay.
But in his private journals, he had written that he refused to have sexual relations with anyone. So here's me thinking he's asexual. But then it's also saying, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. You can still be asexual and have relationships. But he did attempt to... He was in love with a girl from his childhood. And he was too scared to ask her all his life to marry him. And then by the time he got off the courage, she was already married.
Oh.
And then he fell in love with a singer, and he had proposed to her written her a letter proposal and gave it to her when she was on her way to America. And she wrote him back saying, "Oh, but I love you like a brother."
Oh no.
So this guy has no luck in the women department. So he also is seeing men, and he dated a duke, and he was seeing a dancer in the theater, but none of these came into fruition into long-lasting relationships. Which really is so sad.
Yeah.
He's such a good guy. So, because now they know about his relationships with men, scholars are now looking into his work for homoerotic subtext.
Oh, okay.
And that is because Andersen put a lot of pieces of his life into his work. So, The Little Match Girl, which, didn't realize was written by him.
Oh, yeah, no.
And let me tell you, that Disney short that they did of this, Henry warned me. He's like, "You're gonna cry." I'm like, "I'm not gonna cry.
When did they do a Disney short?
I don't know what it was, but it's on Netflix.
Okay.
And he's like, "Are you ready? Because it's gonna make you cry." And I'm like, "No, it's not. I'm so ready."
Did you not read the story beforehand?
No.
Oh, okay, that's why you're like, I'm not gonna cry.
So at first I was like, so happy. I'm like, she found a family. And then, spoiler alert, she's dead.
Yeah, no.
There was ugly sobbing involved. I'm really, really upset by Little Match Girl. So,
no.
A lot of these emotions were brought back up during the research. Yeah.
A lot of his stories didn't end happily.
No, they didn't.
No. I mean, that's true for a lot of fairy tales in general, but, like, his were particularly, because if I remember correctly, Little Mermaid didn't live with the end. No, she turned into Seafoam because he married somebody else.
Right.
Or fell in love with somebody else. The
Yeah.
prince did. There's actually, so I spent probably around 3 hours searching for this goddamn statue with friends when I studied abroad in Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
We actually went to Copenhagen, and they have a statue
Yes, they
dedicated
do.
to the Little Mermaid, and it's sitting out there, and it's like one of the biggest like tourist destinations in Copenhagen.
Yeah, they did that after he died.
Yeah.
To commemorate his work,
Mm-hmm.
life and work. So the little match girl was reminiscent of his mother, who had begged on the street as a child.
Aww.
And then I think is most heartbreaking is the ugly duckling. So he wrote that since he knew what it was like to look and be different. Because he was like really tall and lanky, and he was just an awkward looking guy. And like I said, he was bullied in school, so he knew what it was like to be the outcast. And it broke my heart a little bit.
Oh my goodness.
So my focus on Anderson is going to be the Snow Queen.
Okay.
Because holiday and winter and shit. So this story was published in 1844 in his book New Fairy Tales, first volume, second collection.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it his longest story, but it is the most highly acclaimed. It's actually told in 7 different stories or chapters.
Mm-hmm.
The first is The Mirror and Its Pieces, then A Little Boy and a Little Girl. The third is The Flower Garden of the Woman Who Knew Magic. The fourth is The Prince and His Princess. The fifth is The Little Robber Girl. Sixth is The Lap Woman and the Fin Woman. And the last one is What Happened at the Snow Queen's Palace and What Happened Afterwards. So, yeah, I'm almost done. For those who don't know, this story is the story that provided the source material for Disney's Frozen.
Yeah.
And there are key differences that I pulled out.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the beginning of The Snow Queen, a mirror is created by the devil.
Okay.
Because Hans Christian Andersen. If a shard pierces your heart, it turns into ice.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of the movie where Elsa's ice shards pierce Anna's heart and you're like killing her, spoiler alert, it nearly kills her. But it doesn't.
Gotta put in that disclaimer there. Spoil it a little more, Amanda.
Whatever. If you haven't seen it by now, I don't know where you're living. Probably under a rock.
Okay.
The main characters of the Snow Queen weren't siblings, though they loved each other as brother and sister.
Aww.
And their names were Gerda and Kay. I always thought they were sisters, but Kay is a boy.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know that. After the ice shard hit Kay, spoiler alert, in the Snow Queen, his personality changes for the worse because, you know, it's the devil's mirror shard.
Yeah.
So he becomes really angry and evil. But Anna in the movie, her temperament doesn't change at all. She's just weak and dying. There are no supportive fixer-upper singing trolls in the original story, but there's a hobgoblin who is actually the devil.
Oh.
So if you want to get a little dark,
Yeah.
so Disney changed that for a reason. I mean, think of a little hobgoblin devil singing to Anna that the son that he had raised as a fixer-upper. Like, I think that's hilarious. Cute little devil.
All right. Okay.
I'm going to trademark that now before Disney steals it. There isn't a romantic relationship, including the main characters in the book, whereas Anna gets Hans and Kristoff, and Elsa gets no one. But whatever, that's fine. We still have hope for Frozen 2.
Okay.
Instead of a summer-loving snowman, the Snow Queen features 2 crows who end up getting married because why not fairy tale?
That's so cute.
They're a male and a female crow, and they work with Gerda, and that's how she sends messages.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up getting married somewhere in the story, and I was like, okay.
That's adorable.
Is that where Disney's
I'm here
getting
for
all
crow
of this?
marriage.
All for crow marriage. But there was a reindeer in the original story.
Okay.
It belonged to a psychotic little girl robber in the chapter, The Little Girl Robber, but she's completely psychotic, instead of a hunky ice cutter destined to fall in love with the princess.
Now, when you say psychotic, what do you mean?
I just read that she is completely psychotic, like she's a little crazy, and she's very manipulative, and she just tries to kill people.
Oh, okay.
She's kind of psycho.
Oh, okay.
And she's a little girl, so I'm really not understanding.
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound like a great character at all.
I should read this.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
overall,
the main similarity between the two is, unlike the rest of his works, there's a happy ending in the end.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Oh.
Spoiler alert. Gerda is able to thaw Kay's heart. The same way that Anna's heart was thawed by Elsa's love. Because true love doesn't have to be romantic.
There you go.
Thank you, Disney, for those great life lessons.
All right.
That's what I got.
That's all for you?
This is a really hard week.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess fortunately, I'm going to try and talk quickly-ish.
I did better than I expected, though.
Yeah.
I would say.
Because I have a lot of stuff. I could go into major detail with this because they just, okay. So I want you to sit back for a second.
Okay.
All right. I want to sit.
If I sit back, I'm going to fall for bed. Okay.
I want you to imagine that it's the 1800s.
Okay.
That you are now a pioneer headed west.
Ah, shit.
Yeah. Right?
I'm scared.
You're scared. I'm scared for you. Because heading west wasn't an easy ordeal.
I have a feeling I know what you're talking about, but I'll wait.
All right. So imagine you're heading west. Imagine that your parents are actually pretty rich. So you've got this sweet-ass deal when it comes to the wagon. You've got everything. There's a stove in your wagon. You've got enough oxen. You're pretty sure you're going to make it.
I'm fancy as fuck.
But.
What happened?
Your dad has this great idea to take a shortcut.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So, I'm obviously talking about Donner Party.
Yeah.
So, the Donner Party, for those who don't know, is a very unlucky group of people who decided to head west. And they got trapped in the Colorado mountains. They got trapped there for the winter. I'm going to go into greater detail on this in a second, but they ended up resorting to cannibalism. And only about, I want to say only about 1/3 of the people made it out.
Ah, jeez.
Well, no, half the people made it out. But it wasn't a pretty ordeal. So, all right, so here's the details on this wonderful story. And the reason that I chose this story, too, was one, because we're doing winter, and it obviously, this is, like, the worst winter story I could come up with.
Oh, of course.
Like, in this week. When we said winter last week, I was like, shit, know what I gotta do? I gotta do the Donner Party. This is one of the stories that actually scares me. Like, It's
very hard to scare you.
It is pretty, well, I mean, it's pretty easy to scare me, but you gotta hit the right buttons. But I've read so much about cannibalism over so many years that, like, especially during college when I was doing deeper study into this sort of stuff, this dark tourism and other things. But this story is one that I remember, and I always just, because, I mean, I'm from Kansas. So this is one of the things that you heard a lot about, and, you know, when you're younger, you play the Oregon Trail and everything else like that. But then you learn at the Donner Party, and you're like, holy fucking shit. These people had it hard. Yeah. And if stuff like this happened, how did everybody make it there? And it was, in my mind, it's more of an urban legend, but it happened. So it's not an urban legend. Because there's just something so real about this. And while I was doing my research even, I mean, it's obviously real, but there's something a lot closer, especially when they describe, because if there was one thing that's really weird about the pioneers and heading west and everything, they were really well documented. Between diaries that women had, logs that the men kept, and then different logs at the different forts that people would stop. There's a lot of documentation, so they know what they did and when they got to each part. So, like, getting deeper into this, like, you start reading about what happened. You're like, okay, all right, cool. Okay, they're on schedule. Okay, they're a little off schedule. Okay, well, they ran into this issue or this person died. And then as they get into the mountains, it's like, holy shit. Like, they're not making it out. They're not going to make it out at all.
Oh, no.
Like, we think we have it hard up here in Rochester with, like, 2 feet of snow. Just wait. Okay. So now I'm going to get into the details. That's my little introduction. So the introduction to the Donner Party is on April 16th of 1846, 9 wagons left Springfield, Illinois. So these 9 wagons were comprised of James Reed, who had the big idea to do the shortcut later on. It's hard to describe because they all decided to take the shortcut, but James Reed had the initial idea, which is the initial idea of somebody else. So it was James Reed, and then you have 2 wealthy brothers, Jacob and George Donner. And they decided to take this 2,500-mile journey to California. Because they wanted to have a better climate, and Reed especially had the idea to go because he wanted his wife Margaret to experience the better climate and hope that she would have an ease because she had like chronic headaches. So she hopefully would feel better once they got to California and had this better air and better climate. There were 32 people in these original 9 wagons. So you had the families of Graves, Breens, Murphys, Eddies, McCutcheons, Kesselbergs, and the Wolfingers, as well as 7 Teamsters and a number of bachelors that went along with them. So as they left, they got into the back of a wagon train that was full of 500 wagons, and they planned to follow a path lined out by, here's our man of the hour, Lansford W. Hastings, in his book, The Immigrant's Guide to Going to Oregon and California. Now, so this laid out a track across the Great Basin, which is this area from like halfway through Utah, across Nevada, through California, and a little to the north and a little to the south. It includes like actual valleys, the Rocky Mountains, everything else like that. So the same day, it was supposed to save them around 350 to 400 miles, and it was supposed to be easy terrain. But what they didn't know is this wasn't even actually tried yet. Hastings wrote this book and published it without trying his own trail. And the ironic part is, this could be just speculation, but I read it on a few sites and a few things, that he actually left the same day to try his trail.
Oh my god.
Yeah, as they, like, left Illinois. So, he was really winging it. And this is not even, like, they had no idea. They thought they were going to actually save themselves time on this. They thought they were actually going to take 4 months doing this. And so they left on April 16th, so remember that. Because it's not 4 months at all. Okay. So, yeah. So they originally thought it was going to take 4 months. But, again, not going to. But one little note that I want to make is because Reed was really wealthy. He was really successful. And so was the Donners. They were all really, really fucking successful. So they all had, like, tricked out wagons. So one of the things that I read on one of the sites was, he was determined not to let his family suffer during this long journey. So he bought an extravagant 2-story wagon with a built-in iron stove, spring cushion seats, and bunks for sleeping. Yeah, it took 8 oxen to pull this fucking wagon. And his 12-year-old daughter dubbed it the Pioneer Palace Car.
What?
Yeah.
That's like an RV.
Yeah, RV of the 1800s. Like, I'm like, I didn't even know fucking wagons came in 2 stories. How the fuck does that happen?
Now you do.
Oh my god.
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
How are you planning on getting across the fucking mountain with this shit? I don't fucking know. Anyway, so yeah. they left around April 16th. And so they're going. They have to ford a few rivers, all that good shit. You played Oregon Trail, all that stuff. So they reached Fort Laramie just 1 week behind schedule on June 27th of 1846. And it's here where they get their first warning sign, basically.
Where is Fort Laramie?
You know what? You're asking me questions I didn't actually write down the answers to. What the fuck, Amanda? Let's just do some,
Just so I can understand the trail.
Yeah. So, Fort Laramie is in Wyoming.
Okay. That's a few states over.
That's a few states over. All right. A few states over. We're in fucking New York, Amanda. That's more than a few states over. Well, technically, I guess it is a few states.
From Illinois.
Oh, yeah. From Illinois. It's only one or two, if not just one. Well, there's Nebraska. You know what? I'm not going to debate geography because I'm going to prove I'm fucking stupid. So yeah, here's where they got their first warning sign. James Reed ran into an old friend of his, James Kleiman here. Okay. And he had just traveled the trail that Hastings put out. And he's like, don't do it. That's what he said. He's like, don't do this. It was nearly impossible to pass on foot. He's like, I couldn't imagine a wagon doing it. So everybody, of course, now is this group of people had left the 500 trail at this point, I'm pretty sure. And they're worried now. They're like, well, if they couldn't get by it on foot, we shouldn't really take this trail, right? So at another place, as they were leaving, they met a man I'm mixing up my words here. So as they were leaving Fort Laramie, they met a man carrying a letter from Hastings at the Continental Divide on July 27th. Not 27th. July 11th. I don't know how 27th hopped into my mind. 11th is clearly here. But, so the letter stated that Hastings would meet them at Fort Bridger and lead them on to his cutoff, which passed south of the Great Salt Lake instead of detouring northwest via Fort Hall. So, and this letter put a lot of their, fears to rest. They're like, okay, if he's doing a little bit of a detour, maybe this new area is fine, right? All right. I know.
This has bad idea written all over it.
It has a huge bad idea. So, on July 19th, a week later, the party actually split in two. So, it split off into the people who wanted to take the regular route, northerly known one that people had already taken, and the one where Hastings had not tested yet. It's the unknown Hastings cutoff. And so they split. James Reed and the Donners and a few other people went in this party towards the Hastings cutoff, and they voted George Donner to be the leader of this party, hence the Donner Party. A lot of this is attributed to James Reed because he was the one who originally had the idea and was in contact with Hastings. So, but because George Donner was the one who was labeled the leader of this party, he was given the infamous title at this point, I guess. So at this point, they reached Fort Bridger at July 28th, where they said they were going to meet up with Hastings. Hastings wasn't there, but there was a note. Naturally. But there was a note left for them that said that he was leading another group up, and that they should catch up to him. So
that's not fishy at all.
No, it's not fishy at all. So on August 11th, the wagon train began to make the arduous journey through the Wasatch Mountains. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. In total, on this trip, were 87 people and 23 wagons. They had to abandon some as they were making around 2 miles a day now. So when they were going, 10, 12 was the ideal number. You were making good time if you were doing 10 to 12 miles a day. But now they're doing 2 miles. So they're going at a snail's pace. We wouldn't even, from here, well, not here, I think it's only, no, it is probably, we wouldn't even make it to RIT. We wouldn't even make it to our college from where we're sitting right now, which is around 3 or 4 miles away.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. So they even had to abandon some of their their wagons as they were going forward, and they began to really hate Hastings at this point. They started to blame him majorly. They're like, this guy does not know what the fuck he's talking about. A few of them were kind of iffy on Reed because he kept pushing it, but they were gonna let it go. They were gonna let it go. So I actually forgot to mention this beforehand because it actually wasn't in my notes, but as you move west, it is you are going to lose people. You're going to lose people to consumption, to a lot of other things. Early on, one of the I think it was Reed. Reed brought his wife's mother, who was already like dying of consumption, and she passed away not even a month into the journey. Yeah, so they had lost her. They probably lost somebody else along the way, but I'm not quite sure. But on August 25th, they lost another member, Luke Halloran, near present-day Grantsville, Utah. And this was basically like the set-off for them. They started to get really afraid of this because they knew rations were running low. They weren't, like, there wasn't enough time. And it's August, but they're like, winter's coming, and at this pace, we're not going to make it. Before the snow starts to fall. So they started to head over, and they did actually meet up with Hastings at this point, and he's like, okay, well, now, up ahead is the Great Salt Lake Desert, and it's supposed to take 2 days. It'll be fine! It'll be fine! Took 5 days.
I was gonna say, this does not sound good.
Took 5 days for a 2-day trek. They lost 32 oxen and had to leave behind 4 wagons in total.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was pretty bad. Remember, they left. When they split, they had 23 wagons. So they lost a few already, and so they lost even more now. I don't even know how many oxen they have at this point. They're saying they lost 32 oxen. That sounds like a hell of a lot of oxen to me. Right. But what am I to say? I'm not quite sure up on all of these. But so they got to the Humboldt River on September 26th, and it was here that the new trail met up with Hastings' original path. And they had traveled an extra 125 miles through strenuous mountain terrain and dry desert. So this party was really fucking hating Hastings now. They're like, we're disillusioned as fuck. This wasn't good. This wasn't a shortcut at all. They probably would have, like, almost been to California by now if they had gone on the original path.
Right.
And they started to really hate Reed now at this point, too. Which... morale was low, tensions were high, which led to be on October 5th at Iron Point, two of the wagons actually became entangled together. So it was John Snyder's, a teamster of one of the other wagons, and he began to whip his oxen. And he infuriated another teamster's oxen. And James Reed was ordering them to stop, and when he didn't, Reed just fucking pulled out his knife and stabbed this guy.
What?
Yeah. Like, they were pretty, like, stress was, like, getting to them, and they just he just laid waste to him. He stabbed him in the stomach, and, I think he probably stabbed the oxen, too, at this point. Yeah, so they're like, at this point, we're already late. We're not gonna waste any time. So, one guy, Louis Kieseberg, part of the original people that had come along, he favored on hanging James Reed, just plain out killing the motherfucker. Wow. But everybody else voted to banish him. So they told him to leave. Yeah, they told him to leave his family, and he went riding off to the west with another one of the men named Walter Heron. So that was October 5th. Now remember, they said they were going to take 4 months.
So it would be August.
Yeah.
They'd get there. Yeah,
they're 2 months over their time already. 2 months.
And if they only planned for 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, they could restock at every single fort, but it's still just, it's a heck of a time. And now they've lost somebody to murder, basically. But... alright, so on October 7th, here's another little story, side note, that's still really fucking, eerie for me.
Yeah.
On October 7th, 2 days after they had just banished James Reed for stabbing the guy, Louis Kieseberg turned out a Belgian man named Hardcoop, who had been traveling with him. So the old man who couldn't keep up with the rest of the party because he had severely swollen feet. He started to knock on the wagon doors. Nobody else let him in. Yeah, so he was last seen sitting under a large sagebrush, and he was exhausted. He wasn't able to walk, and he was just left there to die. The wagons went on without him. I don't know if he was an asshole or if any other things, but honestly, Kieseberg sounds like an asshole himself. Jumping to just straight hanging James Reed did kill somebody. But
still.
Yeah, and then he turned him out on his own. Like, I don't know. And these two events were just really the beginning of all their shit. Because on the 12th, 5 days after that, 21 of their oxen were killed by Indians. I think if I remember correctly, it was the Piute? Piute. And they killed these oxen with poison-tipped arrows.
How many oxen do these fuckers have?
I don't know.
Because now they're in their 50s of losses.
Yeah, there
has to be like hundreds.
Yeah, they had to have like hundreds. I mean, I'm guessing that, so it took 8 oxen to pull that really fancy one.
Yeah.
So each one of them probably has like maybe 4 or 6. But still. And then they had extras just in case the other ones got tired, but I don't know. So now on October 19th, one of the men, they had sent men ahead to go to Fort Sutter. Charles Stanton was this man. He came back with 7 mules loaded with beef and flour, 2 Indian guides, and news of a clear but difficult path through the Sierra Nevada. So the caravan decided to camp for 5 days, 50 miles from the summit, and they wanted to rest their oxen before the final push. And unfortunately, this delay basically doomed them, because as they rested, snow started to fall on the mountain. So on October 28th, see, this is what I'm telling you, with they wrote down everything and everybody knew everything. Well, we know it now. They didn't know it then. October 28th, an exhausted James Reed actually came to Sutter's Fort, where he met William McCutcheon, who had now recovered, because the men that they had sent, only Stanton had come back, but the other 2 had fallen ill, so they were staying at the fort itself. So Reed actually did prepare to go back to their family. But I don't think he had returned just yet. So in the meantime, the wagon train continued to the base of the summit, and a lot of shit was just happening for them.
Did they know that snow had started falling before they went up?
I think it was obvious that the snow was falling, but they thought they could make it through. And so George Daughter's wagon axle broke, and he fell behind the rest of the party. 22 people stayed behind to help. It was the Donner family and their hired men, until it was repaired. And he actually cut his hand, too, which would later lead. Wow, my words are getting mixed up. Later lead to his death several months later, because it just never healed, so it's infected. So that made them fall farther behind. But the rest of the party continued up the summit and basically camped out at this place that is now known as Donner's Lake. Because the snow had begun to fall, and it was falling so hard that they knew they couldn't make it farther. They would have to stop. Stanton and the 2 Indians traveled ahead and made it as far as the summit, but they couldn't go any further, so they backtracked and came back. So this area around Donner's Lake, it had level ground, it had a lot of lumber. There was already a cabin here that I guess was abandoned, so they used it, and they built 2 more in the time that they were there. They lived in lean-tos as well, and a lot of makeshift stuff. So they had, not the 87, but around 80 people living in 3 cabins and the surrounding area. Yeah, no, it's crazy. So that was October 28th that they started to come back up, or come up to the summit. So by Thanksgiving, it had, the reason that they had stayed there was 5 feet of snow on the ground. They couldn't make it any further because of that. And by Thanksgiving, the snow hadn't melted. They thought it was going to melt, but it didn't. And so Thanksgiving, it began to snow again, and they had to kill the last of their oxen for food on November 29th. Which is, yeah. So on December 15th, they lost their first person to malnutrition, Ballas Williams. And so this just frightened them. They were like, what the fuck is going to happen to the rest of us? So they, the next day, 5 men, 9 women, and 1 child departed on snowshoes. Because they were like, you know what, we're just going to take the last 100 miles on foot. We need to leave. We don't have any food. We're not going to survive here. So they took off. But they only had a little bit of rations, and they were already weak from hunger. So they tried to make it, but on the 6th day, their food ran out. They went another 3 days without food, and it was freezing, like high winds, freezing weather. It's snowing still, and one of their party, Charles Stanton from earlier, he couldn't keep up, so he stayed behind, and no one found him again. He didn't make it back to Donner Lake, and he didn't make it up with them, so they don't know where he went. He never rejoined the group, my notes say, which is kind of an even more grim way to put that. So a few days later, the party was caught in an actual blizzard, and they were trying to light a fire. They couldn't do it. So Antonio, Patrick Dolan, Franklin Graves, and Lemuel Murphy, they died, and in desperation, the rest of them resorted to cannibalism.
Is this back at Donner Lake?
No, this is up at the summit. This is the small group that
okay.
left. Yeah. So they lived off those bodies that had died, and along the path to Sutter's. So they lived off the bodies of those that had died along the path to Sutter's Fort. The snowshoeing survivors were reduced to 7 by the time they reached safety on the western side of the mountains on January 19th, 1847. So those 7 people did reach the other side. They left. But
that's in, like, November.
Yeah, they left.
It took them 2 months.
Oh, wait, no, it was December 15th that they left.
Okay.
So it took them an entire month to leave. But, so only 2 of the men survived, including William Eddy and William Foster. But all 5 of the women that they had taken on the journey lived. So I guess the child had died too.
So there was 9 people that left originally. So 4 of them died.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Of the 8 dead, 7 had been. Oh wait, no, 8 of them had died. Wait.
Math is not adding.
Math is totally adding up. We got to do this. So 5 men, 9 women, and 1 child. So
15.
Yeah. So 15 were taken. Only 2 of the men had survived. 5 of the women, and maybe the child. No, that's 7. That's 7. 7 and 8. 8 died. The child died too.
Okay, that's
so 8. I'm guessing that's actually the one they didn't cannibalize, because they had 7 they cannibalized. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So of this, so they had actually Reed didn't go. Reed didn't go up. James Reed.
Yeah.
He tried to reach them because he knew that they were stuck there. He actually came back and was like, yo, people at Sutter, you gotta help me out. But because of the Mexican, now my brain's just dying. What was the war that was going on? The Mexican-American War?
I believe so.
Is that the name of it? Yeah. Okay. Because of the Mexican-American War, like their own rations and supplies were depleted. So like we can't send anybody right now. Sorry, dude. Tough tits. But when they were finally able to send somebody out, like he wanted to go up way back when, like probably around November, December, to try and get somebody up there. They weren't able to. So it wasn't until February 5th that they were able to send the first relief party. It was 7 men left the area, And then another second one, headed by James Reed, left 2 days later. So on February 19th, the first party reached the lake, and they found what looked to be a deserted camp. They didn't think anybody was there, but then a ghostly figure of a woman appeared, and it was found to be that 12 of the immigrants were dead, and the 48 that were remaining had gone crazy or were barely clinging to life because they were fucking hungry. So the first group left with 23 people, and then the second one came in and on March 1st, and they saw the signs of cannibalism. They're like, Jesus Christ, these people have been eating each other. So they left with 17 people, but they got caught in another blizzard, and had to leave them and many more at a small place between the two, between the fort and the
lake.
Yeah, the lake. And this was called the Starved Camp, and a lot more people died. So a third party came up on March 12th, and they found the camp had resorted to cannibalism as well. So I guess at this point, they were like, we already ate people. We're going to do whatever we can to survive at this point. So if they die, we're going to eat them. We got to do this. And on the 14th, they were able to get all the way up to another camp that the Donner Party had set up. Because they had tried to either go farther or they hadn't made it as far. And they found that George Donner was dying because of that cut on his hand that had been infected. His wife refused to leave his side even though she was perfectly healthy, but she did send the kids along with the group. Some of the members of the relief party had stayed behind with them to treat George Donner in hopes that he would live, but I guess he either died or they just needed to get home because they didn't want to stay there any longer. So they left around 2 days later to get back. And then a fourth rescue party set out in late March, but were soon stranded in a blinding snowstorm for several days. And on April 17th, the relief party reached the camps to find only Louis Kieseberg alive among the mutilated remains of his former companions. He was the last member of the Donner Party to arrive at Sutter's Fort on April 29th, and it took 2 months and 4 relief parties to rescue the entire surviving Donner Party.
Oh my God.
Yes. So this was, and it's April 29th, so it's a little over a year since they left. This whole ordeal took them over a year to go through, and they hadn't even made it to California. So
it was only supposed to take 4 months.
It was only supposed to take 4 months. So in this entire tragedy, 2/3 of the men in the party had perished, while 2/3 of the women and children lived. So around 41 individuals died, and 46 survived. In the end, 5 had died before they had reached the mountains, and 35 perished either at the mountain camps or trying to cross them. And 1 died just after reaching the valley. So, and many of those who had survived lost toes to frostbite, which is like insult to injury, or injury to injury at this point. Yeah. So news of this spread really quickly. I'm almost done. I'm gonna wrap this up real quick, but news of this spread really fucking quickly. They're like, holy shit, these people resorted to cannibalism. And a lot of people actually, obviously, but they denounced these people for resorting to cannibalism. Whereas the people had their own reasons. Obviously, I'm not supporting cannibalism here, but they had their own reasons, and they were trying to stay alive, but people were like, these people are the devil, basically. And it was basically where I had first heard it was a warning, don't stray from the path. And it actually decreased a lot of the pioneer travel that went across the United States for a while until the gold rush happened later on, because people didn't want to do that. They didn't want to get stuck in the snow. And after that story, I don't fucking blame them.
No, definitely not.
But yeah, so
it's just me, but if I heard snow is falling on the mountain, I'd be like, yo, I'm gonna camp out here until it melts, because I'm not dealing with that shit. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's gonna take me longer.
I don't know. I really don't know.
I just want to stay at the fort.
I guess they just really wanted to get there, but at the same time, it's miserable. I wouldn't have done that. I would have stayed at the fort. Married a soldier or some shit like that.
Right.
Ugh.
Lived a happy life there.
But, okay. Well, that's it for our episode this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's next week?
Homemaking?
Homemaking?
Homemaking, is that what we agreed on?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure it's homemaking. So
Alright.
we'll check our notes and tell you on Facebook if that's for real.
Alright.
I'm pretty sure it's homemaking.
Homemaking.
I got a good one.
You got a good one?
I got a good one already.
Alright, well, I'm excited then. I don't have one yet, so I guess this is payback for this week for being super ready. But, alright, so happy holidays.
And we will see you in the new year.
Yes! Bye!
Bye!